Hey everybody, it's Jim here, and the other day I did a review of this guitar, the 40th Anniversary Squire Vintage Edition Telecaster, and I was met by a lot of comments with people saying that they also really like these guitars and Squire guitars in general, talking about how they modified them and how they feel they are right on par, if not better, with some of their higher end counterparts. However, I was met with a text message from the old co-host of the Audiomo podcast asking me this. And when I read this text message, two things came to my mind. First of all, Dave Nelson, don't ever change. I love you just the way you are, all the negativity and skepticism included with that. And the second was, I really did mean what I said about this guitar. However, it also led me to thinking about the topic of modifying guitars, because I said that I believe this guitar would be an excellent platform to modify. So to begin with, if you have a guitar you really like and maybe you just want to improve it a little bit, where are some good places that you should start? To begin with here, a lot of people immediately jump the gun and they do one thing before anything else, especially with budget guitars. That is, they go right to the pickups. We'll get to those in a second, but before you get there, there's two other things that I would recommend making sure are in really good shape before you do any other alterations. The first is the nut. You want to make sure that the nut is cut well. If it's one of those cheap plasticky kind of nuts, some of them aren't always the best. They'll do the job for a little bit, but I would recommend replacing it with a bone nut and just not looking back from it. It's really something that's very inexpensive. If you don't want to do it yourself, you're talking 40 or 50 bucks in and out the door, getting it done professionally, and you are set to go. The tuning stability of your instrument, regardless of anything else, is paramount, and it should be the very first thing that you consider when you're looking at your guitar and potential modifications. Now, once the nut's all taken care of and good to go, the next place I'd put my attention towards is the bridge. On a Telecaster, it's really straightforward. The only things that I typically look to change on a Telecaster, if it's not intonating well, are the saddles themselves. However, on other guitars, such as guitars that have a tremolo or a different kind of vibrato system on them, having a budget one can work from time to time, but to really enhance the tuning stability and the feel of the instrument, because it can actually affect the tension of the instrument when you change the vibrato or the bridge out, I would absolutely recommend upgrading one of those if it's a problem area. Don't go upgrading something for the sake of doing it. Only do it if it's noticeable that you do have some sort of issues, whether it being tuning or when you are setting the guitar up, you're not able to get it to reliably stay in tune, or a tech can't get it reliably stay in tune. That's just par for the course sometimes. In order to get these guitars that are in this kind of price point out the door and in your hand, certain sacrifices have to be made. The bridge is definitely a place where they often do that. However, luckily for me, this guitar as a mod platform is already great to go in these two specific areas, the nut and the bridge. But that leads me to point number 3, and one thing that I often see as a misconception that people also rush out to change. And I'm gonna try and give you an argument for why you might not need to do that, and that is these guys, the tuners. People think that locking tuners are going to help with the tuning stability of the guitar. That is not the case. 99.99999% of the time, if you're having problems with your tuning stability, it's most likely here. It's the nut, which is why I said the very first thing that you should check to make sure is all good to go and functioning properly is the nut. Locking tuners are more so just going to be a quality of life for string changes and things like that. You just want to make sure that they have an all right ratio to them and that they're not actually really loose. And if you can do that and the guitar is holding tune, there's no reason, like on this guitar, I don't feel that there's a pressing need to replace these tuners, so I wouldn't spend the money to replace them just for the sake of doing it. And now we're at the fun part, which are all of the electrical components. Before, I would swap out the pickups unless they sound egregiously bad, because sometimes you just know they're not going to cut it for you. I would recommend just changing out the pots first, the switch, and the output jack. Put in some high quality CTS, Borns, and Switchcraft components, and you might find that the stock pickups that came in your guitar, you're pretty much all right with them now that you have other stuff complementing them and getting the most out of them. But once you've done that and you still don't love the pickups, try messing with the heights of the pickups. Experiment. Look up what the factory spec says your pickup height should be in relation to the strings. That's going to really make a big impact on how your guitar sounds when it's amplified, and I often see it be something that people kind of don't really give a second thought before immediately switching them out to their favorite aftermarket pickups. However, if you try that, or you just ignore what I said entirely and order the pickups right away with the other parts, I mean, I can't give you much advice on that because it's all going to come down to personal tastes, what kind of guitar it is, what kind of music you like, and all that kind of fun stuff. However, my main question to you guys is, when do you want to modify a guitar? Because I've just been talking about what should be modified and what things I would look at as far as, potential problem areas or potential upgrade areas to really make the most of an instrument. To me, I feel that I can't judge what I need to modify in a guitar, if anything, until I've played it for a little bit. I've made the mistake in the past of having parts already ready to go before I've ever held the guitar in my hands. And looking back on that, I probably could have saved myself a pretty decent amount of change here if I had just been patient, gotten to know the instrument, and then went from there. So if you're somebody who is considering modifying a guitar, or you're in the market for a guitar like this with the intention of modifying it later down the road, just spare yourself a little bit of a potential headache and hit on your wallet and play the thing and really get to understand what it might potentially need or benefit from in terms of a modification. But I'd like to hear from you guys. Two things. The first is, when do you decide you're going to modify a guitar? For me, it's all about once I feel the neck. If I love the neck of a guitar, I'm willing to put the time and the elbow grease in to make the rest of it work around it. And the second is, what's been the best upgrade you've ever made to any instrument that you've owned? That's all I have for you guys today. Also, if you want to see Dave Nelson come back here on the podcast, leave a comment and let him know, and I will harass him because I could not believe that text message. And I feel like it's been a long enough time where it would be fun to have a catch up with an old friend of mine. If you found this useful, helpful, entertaining, yada, 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 you can feel free to leave a like on this video. Please leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts or your philosophy towards modifying guitars. And I will see you on the next video. Tell somebody that you love them, play your guitars, and have a great day. Oh, and one last thing, this is actually really important. I turned the camera back on after I was done filming to make sure I told you this. If you do decide to modify your guitars, I beg of you, keep the stock parts. Don't sell them unless you know that is a lifer guitar. And don't just lie to yourself for the extra few bucks here and there, because if you go to resell the guitar, you're not going to get what you think you're going to get for it on the used market, because not everybody's going to want a guitar modified the exact way that you have it. You're going to be limiting your market. So just please keep the stock parts, keep them safe, throw them in a box, and chuck them in a closet.